Hello, welcome to PortMedia Open Studios. I'm Sarah Hayden and I'm here with David Moon, Sanctuary Director of Joppa Flats Education Center, Mass Audubon.
Yeah.
That's a lot of words to say.
Words.
But
We're a Mass Audubon center out on the Plum Island Turnpike on the way to Plum Island. And we've been there for 15, well actually it's going on 17 years now.
Sadly, I remember when it was built.
I remember when it was a restaurant.
Yes.
The Sportsman's Lodge.
Yes.
We hear all these stories.
Are you from this area originally?
I am not from this area originally, but I've been coming bird watching here since 1979. So I have a vague memory of what it used to be like because that's a spot we would go to find birds.
Wow. We actually had, this is a little sidebar, on Earthport Film Festival, which we have every year, we had a birder. Well, he works up in, I believe it's Portsmouth, but he knows all the bird songs.
Oh, yeah.
And he's amazing. I mean, I don't know if you know who it is, but I can try to figure out who it is afterwards. But unbelievable, to the point where they will respond to him, and it's, you know,
imitate them and all that good stuff.
it's,
yeah,
oh, he's unbelievable. He came, and after the festival, he was one of the speakers, and he did all the bird songs. It's very amazing to me that he can do that. So. You have so many programs. I used to do stuff with my son.
Oh, good.
And it's been a while because you have a million new things that are going on. You even have trips to the Galapagos. I had no idea.
It is sort of soup to nuts.
It's unbelievable. So we can start with a couple of things that you have coming up with your vacation. So it's, and because we'll get this out soon, and then we can talk about, again, some other things with the general catalog.
So just a quick orientation, that Joppa Flats Education Center was put in place to educate birdwatchers at one of the best places to go birdwatching in the Northeast, which is Plum Island.
That's very cool.
It is. It's really special that this place has such a importance, really regionally, as a concentration of wintering and migrating birds. And it's also a really important area because of the Great Marsh out there. I know people don't like greenhead flies, but the Great Marsh is a vital, vital area for fisheries, for birds, and for the entire flow of water here in our estuary. So we also have a full array of programs for children and families and youth in the area of marine ecology and coastal ecology. So all that has developed over the past 20 years or so. The building's been there, as I said, for going on 17 years, and the response has just been amazing. Our audiences come from the region, you know, all over the Boston metro and even into New Hampshire, and then locally, schools and families coming for all that stuff that we have for kids.
It's amazing what was
It's a
there.
great place to be.
Yeah, I think when my son's 23, so I remember buying. It was a bird song thing, so we played the bird songs and stuff like that. I mean, hopefully he'll go back someday to doing some bird watching. I'm not really sure, but it was something that we did. It was fun to do. Looking at the eagles, of course, that was a big deal, and just trying to figure out some of the birds. And there was a lot of bird programs at the Brown School. I remember we did a lot. I don't know what they have now. Do the schools incorporate a lot of bird programs?
We're in the schools, and all the way from right up the street in Newbury to Haverhill. So we're really reaching a lot of kids.
Gosh, time goes like that and everything just explodes. I just am just not even aware. So I know some of the things you have coming up at the end of next week are
one thing that's really charming that we have going on is that on Sundays from December 30 through February 24, every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12:30, we have something called Meet Backyard Birds. And really, it's like a demonstration of bird research. Joppa Flats operates a bird banding station on Plum Island, where we put up 19 nets for 4 months of the year, 2 in spring and 2 in fall, and catch migratory birds, and put little unique numbered aluminum bands on their legs that don't hurt them or cause any problems for them. But that help us learn about what's happening with bird populations, their movements, all kinds of information. And this is a demonstration of that from birds that are caught right in our backyard in the wintertime. And that's going to be run by Ben Flemmer, who is our banding station manager. He's been doing this for a really long time. He's incredibly knowledgeable and loves people. And so it's just a neat chance to see birds that are right in your backyard, right up close in the hand and
Wow.
alive. And they're just amazing to see up close like that. So
I just got my
it's cool.
bird feeders up. I
Yeah.
hadn't had them before, honestly. I just not organized enough to, but I did it.
Yeah, they're going now.
One bird feeder, and then I have the hummingbird feeder, and then I put some, it's like feed for squirrels and stuff behind the fence,
Right.
so they don't come into the
See
yard.
the wildlife, yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
and rabbits or something like that. They'll probably get turkeys.
Oh, yeah.
We have that group,
Mm-hmm.
the 16, I don't know what, that come around and they come right
Absolutely.
through. They're all over the fence.
This is something that has happened in our lifetime, that turkeys, birds in North America get official English or common names. So the official name for turkeys is wild turkey. And
That's much nicer than just turkey.
well, they often have that American or common or wild or something in front of the name for the bird. And wild turkey was almost extirpated, meaning wiped out, in the East, and really just brought back by fish and game officials in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and other New England states, when they realized that the forests that they needed had grown back from the days when New England was mostly pasture. And it didn't make sense they weren't back, so they gave them a little help to get started, and now look what we've got.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
When I was a kid, you couldn't see a turkey
No.
unless you went to the wilds of western Pennsylvania, or better
never
yet,
saw a turkey.
Colorado.
No.
And now it's a native bird that has recovered and is just a really charming part of our local animal population.
Yeah. Sometimes
Even
when we're,
kind of to the point where they're kind of shutting down traffic.
Yeah.
You know, this happens.
it's fun to watch
Yeah.
them crossing the street. There's a big,
Yeah.
what do you call it when?
The big guy, the tom.
Yeah, but when you've got a lot of turkeys together,
a
it's
flock is good
a
enough.
flock.
Yeah.
I saw them when they were little.
Mhm.
They were, I think, 12 or 14,
Oh, yeah.
and they ran across the street. They were
Right.
so cute. And I've
Right.
watched them get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're wandering around. I did see, I live off of Low Street, and
Mhm.
across there's a big open pasture,
Mhm.
and there was a deer grazing, and I did see
Yeah.
I want to say it was a wolf, coyote, coy wolf, I don't know which it was. It was
Coyote.
looking at, it was a coyote.
If it wasn't a dog, it was a coyote.
It
Yeah,
it
we have
definitely
fox and coyote. Yeah.
is big.
Yeah.
But I think about those.
sure
Do they
that-
go after
I'm
turkeys?
sure they do.
Yeah.
And eastern coyote is a really interesting thing because we didn't have coyotes until the 70s. That is a somewhat poorly known phenomenon, but the western coyote somehow expanded out of Oklahoma and up across Canada. Came down, they did interbreed with wolves a bit, got a little bigger, but they're still coyotes. And they came down into New England and the rest of the East. Essentially, that return of the forest that happened 100 years or so ago, we didn't have wolves anymore, but there was space for a larger predator than foxes, let's say. And coyotes are incredibly adaptable. And once they made it here, they
They're
have
here.
thrived. We have nothing to fear from them. They don't attack people. They may occasionally take some of our smaller pets. But, you know, that's a tough thing. Other animals can do that too. It's why we really ask people to keep cats in particular inside, or one of the reasons. But coyotes are really interesting animals, and they are predators. And in fact, having coyotes around as maybe a control on how many turkeys do we need? It's great having them, and we don't want them necessarily absolutely everywhere.
You know what I don't like about them? They make a mess in the yard, and then the dog just is so delighted
Oh yeah,
to
it's
just
all
roll.
exciting,
Wonderful turkey
wonderful.
smell. And I just think
Uh-huh.
when she came in the other day, I was like, oh my God, what have you been doing? It's gross, but.
Well, if it wasn't that, it certainly would be something else.
We have a
right?
lot. We actually have a little yard for
Uh-huh.
Newburyport's considered a lot, so we do
Mm.
have a lot of. I mean, we've seen it a lot of,
Yeah.
of wildlife go through, so
Yeah.
it's okay. It's just
Yeah.
yeah. There's a coyote right around here. It'll walk through the
Yeah.
back by the trash and
Right.
around.
Well,
stir-
in the West, they were living in cities already. A lot of predators, interestingly, over the past few decades, a number of predators and prey animals, for that matter, have adapted to living with people more closely. We had a population boom after the Second World War, a lot of people expanding into areas that had been farmland or wilder, And now, you know, when I, again, growing up in the 60s and 70s, seeing a white-tailed deer was something you kind of went to the mountains for. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And now, of course, they live in the suburbs. So that was a change that people say, well, they got pushed out by development. But they weren't living there before. They needed to find a way to survive there. And one factor is they weren't being hunted.
Yeah.
And there weren't predators that could get them, and there's a lot of tasty bushes, and so deer adapted. Something really interesting that's happened in more recent times is that a hawk called the Cooper's hawk has adapted to living in the suburbs and pretty much living off of the feeder birds that we produce. So bird feeding is another thing that has really expanded over the last several decades, and the incredible expansion of feeding birds, it helps birds to feed them in the wintertime, right? So more of them survive, and it keeps the population of the ones that eat that stuff, the seed that we put out. It keeps their population higher, and eventually one of the real strong bird predators, one of them is the Cooper's hawk, somehow they just seem to get it, even better than some of the other birds that eat other birds. Like there's falcons and other hawks that eat birds, but the Cooper's hawk is now a common thing to see in neighborhoods, and people probably who have feeders have experiences now of
Oh boy,
seeing that happen, and it's
I wasn't aware of this.
And
Cooper's
so
hawk.
it's a predator that now is living in the suburbs with us, and that's what happens over time, is how nature adapts to changing conditions. And the growth of suburbia out of the cities has really meant that some animals have to learn to live with us.
Yeah, that's
And they do.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You have a very varied background about animals. It's not just birds, but it's
Yeah, I've actually done environmental education for my career, and so
it's
birds and
interesting.
salamanders, all bees, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to look for salamanders. I haven't in a long time, but I think they're still out there
Oh yeah, they're out there.
if you go digging around in
Yeah.
the woods. So I noticed you had some programs that are specific that are coming up next week, I guess during vacation time.
We do.
And then, so you might want to mention those, and then we can talk a couple of the other programs.
So
you
there are a
offer.
lot of little opportunities for people to come to Joppa Flats when kids are off school and find things to do for their kids. And so really going to our website and
It's
just doing
very,
Joppa
very
Flats.
good.
There's a lot that's there that you can see what's available for what ages.
Good, thorough website you guys have built.
So that's all there. Some big events we have coming up. Really the biggest one, really for the general public, is what we call our Merrimack River Eagle Festival. And that's something we do each year in February. This year it's February 9, a Saturday. And it is a great opportunity for the public to see things right here in Newburyport and Amesbury that that are always here in the winter, but they might not otherwise see. And we really hook people with the notion that they may see eagles, and they might see eagles. I'm actually pretty
I've seen
optimistic.
them at the Eagle Festival.
Yep, they're here year-round. A few are here year-round, and increasingly there are increasing numbers of eagle pairs in our region nesting. But what happens here that's special is that in a good cold winter, so through January, it's been cold this fall, so it's sort of, if this pattern continues, if the jet stream stays where it is and that sort of thing, and the lakes and rivers up north really freeze up, and even to the west of us, eagles need to eat fish. That's what they do through the winter. They'll eat anything that they can, they'll eat carcasses, they'll eat anything, but they really go after fish. So in order to truly survive, they have to go where there's open water. And the mouth of the Merrimack River stays open. It's tidal, the current's really strong, so because there's salt in there, that helps it stay open. It freezes less easily. And eagles will come here year after year in those really cold winters to hang out and find lots of fish. So there have been winters in the past couple decades where there have been really a lot of eagles here. And that fluctuates with the cold. We always have some, but what happens is that people go to the sites that we have volunteers manning and womaning up and down the river, and we have these folks out there that have spotting scopes and can show you an eagle if it's out there, but then there's all this amazing waterfowl, these incredibly beautiful ducks and loons and eiders and cormorants. They're in the river in the wintertime. That people don't really see. And so when you see that through a good telescope that's designed for birds and that sort of thing, it's really a revelation that there are these beautiful animals living right in our backyard.
That sounds cool.
It's really neat. So that's Saturday, February 9. We have programs all over town on that day. There are live raptor demonstrations at City Hall and at Joppa Flats and at Parker River National Wildlife Refuge. They're our partners on this event. And we work very closely with them, and I really enjoy that. So that's something we do together that is for everybody of every age. There's something. Something else we have coming up that's a little bit more esoteric, I guess, is what we call the Super Bowl of Birding.
I was reading about that. I had not known about that.
We typically do it the week right before the Super Bowl. This year it's a little earlier. But that's an event where we're giving something to the real serious birders, as well as people that are seriously wanting to get involved. But it's a competition. And Joppa Flats educational programs for bird watchers, mostly adult programs, really steps away from competition. We want to make sure everyone has a chance to see birds and grow and learn and feel comfortable. But this is a fun thing that happens where teams form and they go and try and see as many birds, but they also are trying to see as many unusual birds as they can, because we assign points to all the different species they might find, and then they compete for the most points. And the people that are really good at it have amazing strategies. They're
bird nerds.
They scout weeks in advance to see what's where, because it really changes week to week. And so the really successful ones take extra time beforehand to see who's where and then make a route plan that gets them the most points. And it's
How many people do you
tons
have
of fun.
doing this?
Well, we had, let's see, last year we had 27 teams.
Wow.
Over, it's like 130 birders out there. It was
That's
just,
really
that was a
great.
really good one. And they come from all over. We even have had a team coming up from Pennsylvania to do this. There's a group of students from Cornell University, because
That's
Cornell
very cool.
is a real bird place, has a really strong ornithology program. It's fun. And it's a nice day to go birding for everybody else, because as this is taking place, we are sending out updates on the rare things people find all over Essex County and Rockingham County in New Hampshire. So for any birder who wants to find some special birds, January 19 is a day to remember. That's Saturday. There'll be the Mass Bird, which is a listserv you can learn about from us. We'll be sending out where all the rare birds are that day in 2 counties. And people actually sort of plan to, okay, I'm going to be watching this on my phone and
That's cool.
finding all the really unusual stuff that they have to report. That's part
It's
of
like
the
road
rules.
rally, but it's
Yeah,
bird road rally.
Yeah, pretty
That's
much.
that
It
sounds
is.
like
It's a lot of
fun.
fun.
Yeah, I had not heard of that. Some of these things are new in the last, let's say, 10 years, because I don't know where my life has gone, but
Well,
right
I've been
here.
here for 3 years now at Joppa Flats, and having had a lot of experience in different realms of environmental education, I was just delighted to come and find these really kind of genius programs, something for all the new people, or something for the really experienced people, the young ones, the old ones.
now
It's
someone
great.
who's been there a long time is Lisa
Lisa Hutchings.
Hutchings.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I had done some interviews with her long time ago.
She's still at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, I just remember thinking I had seen her name still doing all of these different programs. And then someone else came over wondering about being a member and what kinds of things they could do. And I said, yes, we can, for organizational members, if you want to use equipment to build your volunteer capacity by doing training videos and things like that.
Nice.
That's fine, because I think building volunteer capacity is an important thing, and why not?
We
use the
couldn't do
resources.
what we do without an unbelievable core of volunteers that do everything from sitting at the front desk and welcoming people and telling them what's where and that sort of thing, to incredible educators. Sometimes people who retire from teaching, or who are starting out and want to learn the ropes, but have a real passion for nature and for education, that make everything go. And so we're very fortunate that we're able to gather all these folks that are so passionate about sharing their passion for nature with others.
I think that
We're
takes
very
time
fortunate.
too, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it does. It does.
To
And
really build, and then I don't want to, like build the not the quality of the volunteer, but the depth of knowledge that the volunteer might have. So
Absolutely.
you have different types of volunteers where you can actually set a volunteer to do a task that you maybe in the past would only have been able to use
To
as staff.
have staff people do
Yeah,
it.
see,
Absolutely.
that's what I think for us as a volunteer organization, hopefully as
Mhm.
we build down the road,
Sure.
maybe in 10 years,
Yeah.
that will evolve. Because some of the things that you guys do are complicated, but you would need volunteers. There's
Well, it's true.
Your
And-
website's amazing. You have so
Well, thank
much
you.
on that
That's great to
website.
hear.
Holy cow.
Yeah. You know, we have people doing science volunteering where they're the bird banders. I know that at one point there were 42 people on that list.
That's
that were
just
coming some of the
unbelievable.
time, and some of them very regularly, to learn all the different skills involved in this very delicate operation of handling birds as safely as possible, because we can't be harming birds. You know, we
No.
want to learn about them, but we have to be very, very careful, and succeed at that, as well as the ability to actually collect accurate data. So there's science, there's education, there's all kinds of stuff.
There's
that people are
fun.
doing.
I mean, what I wrote down
Yeah.
is we have after-school programs and educational programs. You do scouting programs, you do birthday parties,
Yep.
you have a touch tank, you do nature presentations for work if people want to have something different for their
Sure.
staff
Yep.
meeting, which
We
I
have
think
lecture
is
series that we can take around, and
it's unbelievable.
it's as much as I do a lot with bird watching at this particular site. I take a show about mushrooms around to tell people about that, and you know, there's a lot that
Yeah.
people know there. Whatever way people want to get involved with being outside in nature and learning about it, we have a lot for people.
I put Wednesday evening lecture series. What's
Sure.
that? I mean,
Well, so every month there's a different Wednesday evening
Mm-hmm.
where someone will come and talk about something. Occasionally we have sort of a regular thing is for us to tell about all the amazing birds that live in different parts of the world that we go to, because our curriculum in teaching people about birds ranges from a simple walk for a few hours every Wednesday morning that people can drop in on, no registration, to workshops that are intensive on a given group of birds or another, and then trips that go from just up and down the Maine coast or our region all the way to, I know that Dave Larson, who is our real ornithologist, is taking people to Antarctica.
that's
coming
amazing.
up. And we're going to Iceland, we're going to Ecuador, so we have international trips.
I didn't see Iceland or Ecuador. That's on your website?
Those are trips that go out of, that are organized by our headquarters in Lincoln, the international ones. Joppa Flats designs trips around the country. So I'm going to Texas twice this year.
I think I
South
saw
Texas,
that.
and in both cases at different points along the Rio Grande, which are special, different kinds of desert. We're going to North Dakota and Minnesota. We go all over. We go to the best birding places there are.
When
around the
did this
country.
happen? I don't.
This has been developing. I mean, these kinds of trip programs have been going on since the whole start of it. That was almost what got it going, because our founding sanctuary director, Bill Getty, started at Mass Audubon as a trip leader and loving to show people birds and teach people about that. And he just has a wonderful following of people that enjoy the way he teaches about it. He'd take them in the neighborhood, in the region, in this country, in the world. And he's still doing that for us. So
yeah, I might have heard of a
great.
few trips, but when the facility first opened, it's grown immensely.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
is
it's a
really
lot of different
amazing.
programs.
Yeah, I think those programs sound very interesting. They're all on the website if people are wondering.
And we're seeing ourselves growing in the future in terms of, an interesting thing is that Joppa Flats Education Center is the lowest Mass Audubon staffed building. So we've got a lot of buildings all over the state. It's a big organization. There are 20 staffed centers like Joppa. A wonderful one that people should see is down in Topsfield, Ipswich River Wildlife Sanctuary, is an amazingly fantastic place. It's not just a walk in the woods. It's an incredible array of wetlands and boardwalks and woods, and it's really pretty incredible. But these centers are all over. Joppa happens to be the closest to sea level of any of them. There are lots of them along the coast, but they're mostly a little higher up. So we're really in a place where we're seeing the sea coming higher and higher. And we're not really, I didn't see it, come higher last year over the year before or anything like that. But things are happening in our region around sea level that people who have been watching it for decades are saying are different. We're seeing roads covered by the tide more often than they used to be. And I need to learn more about this, but we're really wanting to pay attention to that and start thinking about long term, what are we going to do as a community? Mass Audubon has a particular role in this, which is we conserve land, we steward land, we study nature and protect it. And as it turns out, nature is really our best defense against the changes that are to come with climate change, with sea level rise. And we're going to be learning what we need to do in our region here in the Great Marsh area, from the north, from Cape Ann all the way across the border into New Hampshire, what we need to do to preserve the Great Marsh, to protect the animals that live there, to protect our coast. And nature is going to be a really important part of that. I just learned today about a gentleman who's studied what they've done in Venice. And it turns out Venice is not only dealing with the fact they're really close to the ocean because they've got canals everywhere, but they've also been sinking. So they've had to try things sooner than we've had to try things. And they've done things with restoring marshes and other landforms near the sea that has protected them. So we're going to be learning about that stuff and sharing it with the community.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's our job as Mass Audubon, to protect nature, and it's for wildlife, it's for people, it's for both of us living together.
Do you document it with video?
Well, what we're doing now is, in that regard, is there's a local guy named Peter Phippen who is involved in all kinds of areas of looking at the coast and what's happening. He has a technique for measuring erosion of the salt marsh. Because salt marshes is one of the most important things salt marshes do, is they help mitigate the impact of storms. And so big waves are lessened when they have to go through all that. And so we're looking at how the marsh may be eroding along the edges of the creeks and other places. And in fact, right in front of Joppa, we're looking at that as one of the more kind of broken up pieces of salt marsh around. And so he's helped us to set up a transect to measure the actual edge, what it looks like, and we've got students and interns involved in that.
That's very
So yeah,
interesting.
we're beginning to document that stuff more and more.
Well, we've covered a lot of area in this interview. I think, for people, like myself included, that haven't, have gotten, as I was speaking in the last interview, you kind of get caught up with your life and things get very busy, and you forget sometimes what's around in your community that's just right there for you to do. And I certainly was very interested in, looking into some of those programs that you have for myself and get back out there into nature. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you offer that are just sort of drop in, which I think is great.
A lot of that, and things you register for. One thing we do want people to know about, just which is fun, is that we're having another big year for snowy owls. People might remember a year several years ago when there were snowy owls everywhere. I came down one weekend and saw 9 at once.
I'd like to see a snowy owl.
It's cool. It turns out that, contrary to what people thought, it's now thought that the big years we have, when there's a lot of snowy owls around, when you can find one near you, that it's not because there's no food up north for them and they have to leave. It's because they had such a good year that there are a lot of young that are produced, and they just disperse. The more there are, the more they disperse. And there was one year where it was just remarkable. They were down in Florida practically. So this last winter, we had quite a few. And I now have a number that I can sort of relate in terms of what are the big years and the small years. A wonderful figure in Mass Audubon, Norm Smith, runs a program where he traps snowy owls that go to Logan Airport. Because jets and owls don't mix. They don't want the owl going in that engine, and we don't want to hurt the owls. So he has traps that don't hurt the owls, that catch them in a net, and he moves them, and it works pretty well. Like one shows up, he traps it, he takes it somewhere far away, and there aren't as many owls there. And in a normal year, he catches about 8 of them, which is kind of cool that 8 of them show up. In the biggest year recently, it was 200. Last year was over 100. So last year was a very big year, and he's starting to see numbers that are headed in that direction. The fun part is that it looks like most of the birds that show up in those big years are ones that were born that year. You can tell from their plumage. And this year he's catching ones that are about 2 years old, and it looks like last year's birds sort of liked it and are coming back.
Oh, wow.
So at this point, if you spend a few hours out on Plum Island, you have a pretty good chance of finding one, especially if you see a whole bunch of people with cameras all aiming in the same spot.
Yeah.
A lot of times it means there's a snowy owl out there.
I will have to go look, because
It
I
is
think that would
exciting.
be fun to
And
see.
it's just good to be out on that beautiful undeveloped island. It is just an amazing treasure that we have right here.
Yeah.
Thanks to the Fish and Wildlife Service and our National Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah.
beautiful area we live in.
Yeah,
Well, it's been great speaking with you, David,
Thanks.
and I hope that we can do this again.
absolutely. Happy to come.
And as I said during the last interview, this is the way we've set this up. This PortMedia Open Studios, Open PortMedia Studios, whichever way you want to say. If there are members that are interested in interviewing people in the community, we welcome people to come in and become a member, and then they can just come in with their guests. There's no setting up anything. It's already set up, so they can just get right to interviewing somebody, and we can get stuff out in the
good.
community. So it's streamlined. So hopefully they'll see this and they'll be like, oh, I think I can do
Nice.
that. You can do it. Great. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in. Yes, and we'll talk again.
Okay.
Thank you for watching PortMedia Open Studios.